Welcome back to A Cinderella Story with a Twist. Today, I want to sit with you in a topic that most people try to rush through or tidy up with nice words. We are going to talk about grief. And grief can show up in many forms, and you may experience it in a very different ways through your life. And of course, there is the grief of losing a loved one because they pass, but there is also grief for a situation, grief for the version of you that you had to leave behind, grief for a relationship that ended, even when you were the one who chose to walk away. There is grief that looks like heartbreak, and grief that looks like anger or numbness or quiet emptiness on a Tuesday afternoon when life looks fine from the outside. Now, in this episode, I want to share a few seasons of grief from my own life and how they showed up in my body and what I wish I had known earlier about riding those waves instead of drowning in them. My hope is that while you listen, you hear pieces of your own story and feel a little less alone inside. Let me start with this. I lost my grandparents when I was very young, so in a way, death was not new to me, but it also didn't touch me deeply yet. The first grief I really remember consciously as an adult was when I was in my 30s and my stepfather passed away unexpectedly. We were pretty close. He was a steady figure in my life, and yet when he died, I did not feel the grief in the way that people might expect. And it was during COVID. I had just gotten divorced. The whole world was upside down. I was navigating my own transition, and travel restrictions meant that I could not fly back to my home country to be with my family and to be present at the funeral. So I was physically far away, and internally I was deep in the grief of ending my own marriage and the chaos of reinventing my life in the middle of a global freaking pandemic. So on the outside, my stepfather's death was a big loss, but on the inside, I felt distant, almost numb. And maybe you've had that too, where a loss happens and you think, why am I not feeling this even more? Is there like something wrong with me? But looking back now, I can see that my emotional bandwidth was already full. My system was using the available energy to process the grief of my own divorce and the shock and all the changes and the pandemic. And there was simply no extra capacity to process another big loss fully in that moment. And that is something important to understand about grief. Sometimes it gets postponed. It does not mean we don't care. It means our system is closing some doors to keep us functioning. I also want to say this, that even though I wasn't physically there, I have a very strong sense of connection with spirit. So I know in my bones that my stepfather has forgiven all that. Everything is good, that I am loved from the other side, and that my love was felt towards the other side, and that the bond we had didn't change. Now, I was moving through a different kind of grief, right? I told you before, ending a marriage after 7 years being together. And there is saying that life moves in cycles of 7 years. Every 7 years, something in you renews, breaks open, or asks for a new chapter. And for me, that was definitely true. What surprised me about the divorce grief was that two things at the same time could be true. On one side, I felt my inner spark coming back. I felt joy. I felt freedom. The absence of pressure and pretending. There was a relief. There was spaciousness. And on the other side, there were moments of deep emptiness. The reality of having lost a life, a person that I shared the daily routines with, the rituals, the drama, the jokes, the shared bed, and all that was gone. And there was the part that crushed my heart the most was the co-parenting. My children were very young. My youngest was 6 months old at the time, and my daughter 2.5. And we had a schedule where we co-parented every few days, on and off. And I still remember so clearly the feeling of dropping them off, driving back home, and being hit with an immense wave of emptiness and loneliness. And walking into a quiet house where it was full with toys and voices, and suddenly there was nothing. And in that period, I did something that, I don't know if you would recognize it, but when I come home, I would put away all their things, their toys, their clothes, little reminders of them. I would literally close the door on that motherhood chapter for these few days. I think to protect myself from being triggered constantly. Out of sight, out of sight of my nervous system. And then I would shift into a different identity. Okay, who am I without them right now? What is my mission? What am I creating? And I poured myself into my programs and a new business. I returned to dance. I started performing and teaching again. I found my community in the world of Latin dance. So my life became this back and forth between two worlds. When I expected the kids back, I would shift again. The chapter of dating and freedom would close, and I would be fully in motherhood mode. I was just present with them. There was a routine. We will be cooking, the playgrounds, the bath time, the bedtime. And I thought that by leaving the marriage, I left that survival mode. And in some ways, yes, the biggest tension and stress went away, but now I was responsible for myself and for providing. So on the days that the kids were gone, I would work late, after midnight hours on my laptop, creating websites, building new offerings, doing the boring back-end tasks. And stopping was hard because my anxiety was still there. My default mode, the go, 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 things need to happen fast, was still there. When I had an idea, I wanted to be being realized the next day. And that I could alternate between both motherhood energy and creator energy was great, but internally I still had to learn how to reprogram my old patterns. I had to learn how to calm the part of me that only felt safe when I was moving, producing, fixing, doing. And this is important. There was no one magic key. There was no single retreat or a session that suddenly everything was unlocked and I felt happy and regulated. It was a long process, and I was searching for different treatments and modalities, trying them, integrating what worked, disregarding what did not work. I did not hire a coach or a therapist at that time, but I was studying, self-studying, taking trainings, doing certifications. But I now know that hiring a professional would definitely have added on help and speeded it up. The way I work today was born out of that messy, long rebuild and coming back from grief. And I learned that grief does not move in a straight line. It does not care about timelines, literally. Grief can overcome you like a big wave, washing over you, wiping you out. And there were days that I felt steady and proud, even excited about my new life. And then there were days, there were a song, a smell, a memory, a photo that would break me into tears. So no, grief is not linear. You do not move from stage 1 to stage 5 and then graduate. You move back and forth between feelings, relief, anger, sadness, numbness, tenderness, hope, and even in the same week, sometimes in the same day. And the second time I really had to handle grief in a big way was not a long-term relationship. And this time The grief came with a lot of mixed emotions and anger. A very specific type of heartbreak, which was betrayal. And I discovered a web of lies, of hidden addictions, a life that a person lived behind my back. And I want to be clear that grief is not only for the person who dies or the relationship that ends kindly. Grief is also for the life that you thought you were living that turns out to be a lie. It is grieving the version of yourself that believed in that story. Grieving the home you thought was safe when in reality it was built on secrets. And what hurt me most was not the act itself. It was the broken trust. The way someone can lure you out of your safe space and invite you to fully trust, to surrender, to depend on them, and at the same time be doing completely different things behind your back. In that relationship, the ending was not a long build-up. Like my first marriage, that was a gradual process, many conversations, breaking up, back together again, trying different options, and over time, the decision was there to leave. But this one was a rupture, instant, one moment, and I realized everything I believed in was gone. I was not only grieving the relationship, I was grieving my own sense of what was real. I was grieving the version of me that trusted so deeply, and the part of me that felt so foolish afterwards. And maybe you've been there. Maybe you are there right now. Grief that arrives with betrayal brings rage, disgust, shame, confusion. And the nervous system response can be very strong. The fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and all four can show up in different moments. So what do we do with all this? If you are listening and thinking, yes, that's me, I'm in one of these areas of grief, let me give you a few nervous system aware reflections and practices. First, know that opposite feelings can be true at the same time. You can feel relief that something ended and still grieve it deeply. You can love your children and still feel empty when they go to the other parent, or maybe feel a lot of freedom when they are gone. There is no moral judgment in this. It is simply how complex we are. Second is that your grief is not on a timer. There is no deadline by which you need to be over it. Your system will process in layers and in cycles. Sometimes you feel like, yes, I'm okay. I'm strong. I'm moving forward. And then a wave comes and you feel like you are back at day one. But you are not back at day one. You are meeting a new layer. And third is that your body needs a way to move grief so it does not get stuck as chronic stress. And this is where the somatic piece comes in. So I'm sharing a simple practice that you can use when you hit a wave of grief, however that looks like. And if you're not driving and it feels safe, you can try this with me. So when a wave comes, instead of immediately distracting yourself, see if you can pause. If you can, put both feet on the floor and feel the ground. You're still here. Your life did not end. All right, place one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Take a slow breath into your lower belly, your lower ribs, and then exhale. Let out a small sound, a hum. So there is nothing wrong with feeling this, and you can repeat that. Feel what you're feeling, let your facial muscles soften, tears come. You are not fixing it, you are not analyzing it, you're simply being present with what is inside of your body, and you can name that. And you're safe enough to feel. And if the intensity rises too high, you can open your eyes and you can look around the room. You can name 5 things that you see and come back into the present moment. So it's acknowledging, where does it live in your body? Where's the response? I did a lot of this work, and I know what works and what doesn't work, and sometimes little tweaks will make it work. So please reach out if you are a little unclear on how to navigate at all. And if anything in this story sounded really like your own heart, your own house, your own car rides, going home in silence, always know that it's never too much, what you're feeling. It's never too little. Don't judge yourself. Don't let others judge you. It's your process. And reach out for support if things become too hard, too difficult. All right? I understand what you're walking through, so you can always reach out to me. You survived already the chaos, right? And now you're learning to live again, and not just to get through the day. There's one more piece I want to name because it was such a big part of how I lived with grief in my daily life. Grief was not something that visited me once in a while. For a long time, it was simply part of the atmosphere of my days. It was there when I woke up. It was there in the quiet moments after the drop-offs. It was there in the evenings when the house felt too quiet. And what helped me move through that season was not pretending the grief was not there, but it was choosing again and again to look for the silver lining that each situation brought me. So yes, it's connecting with the feeling. Yes, it's moving it somatically, but also really look at what else is there. What else is real? What else is true? What else do I have? What else can I be grateful for? What new opportunities give this to me? And start painting a new clean canvas. So for me, that was feeling alive again, being on stage again, feeling my body again, creating new life, a new business. There were so many opportunities that comes with loss, and it's all what you focus on. Yes, we need to focus on it, small moments, but then we can release, breathe, move through it, and look at what else is there from a positive point of view. Where can you paint a new story? And some days that might look as simply as picking an outfit that you like, choosing music you love, or cooking something just for you, because you enjoy that meal so much. And this is not bypassing, this is not just focusing on the positive and not just ignoring the pain. It's saying I honor what I lost, and I also honor what is being born in the space it left. From a nervous system perspective, this matters. When we only focus on the grief, our body stays locked on when it's gone, and we can get stuck in collapse. When we also learn to notice the beauty, the opportunity, the small pockets of joy and possibility, we give our system reasons to move towards life again. So in my darkest days, I was holding both. The part of me that was heartbroken over the life that ended, and the part of me that was quietly excited about the life I could now create from my own truth. If you are in grief right now, Maybe you can ask yourself very softly, yes, this is what I lost. And what, if anything, did loss make possible? What is here now that was not allowed to exist before? And you do not have to like the answers yet. You do not have to feel grateful for the pain. But simply opening the question can start to turn your face towards the blank canvas that is slowly appearing in front of you. And over time, that is what helped me not drown in grief, but learn to walk with it and still allow color and dance and pleasure back into my story. Thank you for being here with me in this conversation. And if you want to explore somatic tools to move through grief without abandoning yourself, you can find resources and ways to work with me and reach out to me in any way. This was a Cinderella story with a twist. I'm sending you lots of love wherever you are in your grief wave today. Talk soon.